Hello everyone, I'm Kim and welcome to my sewing room. I hope you're all really well and are having a lovely day. This video is one in a series of videos I'm doing making the B6747 shirt. So if you haven't seen any of the previous videos, I will put all of the links in the description, so go and find your place in this sew along. We're at a stage now where we're going to start looking at making up the sleeve. So we're going to be adding the sleeve placket, the cuff, and then inserting the whole sleeve into the shirt. So you might have noticed that I don't always follow the techniques that are outlined in the pattern. I have over the years developed my own techniques, and I prefer to use them because they suit my sewing style. So you will find your own way of doing things also. So if you're a beginner sewist, experiment all the different ways to do one technique and just find the one that works for you. So you will also notice in this sew along that there are some close-ups of my machine. My machine squeaks like mad. She has always squeaked. She squeaked from the very first day I got her brand new. And though she's been back to the shop many a time, they insist she doesn't squeak. So they must be deaf. But she works perfectly. So I've got used to her squeak, but I know it can be a bit irritating. So I've tried to limit the amount of squeaking in the video. So with that said, let's launch into this video and I will see you at the other end. So we have our sleeve, and do you remember the markings that we made? So we've got a marking here and there are two lines here. So first of all, we're going to do the opening for the sleeve where the continuous lap is going in, and here's the placket that we made a little bit longer. So first of all, I am going to stitch up one side of the placket. I'm going to then turn it so I have one stitch across the top, and then I'm going to turn it and then come down, so the top is effectively flat rather than pointed. Right, so I'm just going to stitch up where I've marked the fabric up to the top. I'm going to give it a flat top, so I'm just going to do one stitch across, and then I'm going to stitch down the other side. So I'm just going to cut into that shape right up to that flat stitch, but not through it obviously. Okay. Right, so there we have our opening. Right, so we've got our sleeve. So this is what we've just done, and we have our placket. So this is the placket that we cut a little bit longer, and I have used an erasable pen and drawn in a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's going to help as a stitching guide. So I've got my sleeve. So first of all, I'm going to position my placket so it's right side up. Then I'm going to position my sleeve on top of it, and it's also right side up, and I have given myself this extra bit of fabric on the placket so that will jut out from the sleeve, and this stitch line on the sleeve will effectively sit on top of the drawn line of the placket, and we'll just use it as a guide. So I'm just going to pin it temporarily, and then I'm going to take it to machine and take you through this process. So first of all, I'm just going to put my needle into the extended placket just to get it started, and then I'm going to slowly make my way down to the sleeve, and I'm just going to make sure that this stitch line here effectively sits on top of the drawn line on the placket. I'm just going to do a few stitches to get it going. Right, so the needle is in both of the pieces of fabric now, so all I need to do is just make sure that I keep this stitch line on top of this drawn line. So I'm just really going to make my way down to this point here. And when I stitch, I also like to stitch to the left side of the stitching that's already there. Okay, so here we go. So just keep going until you get to the very top of that stitching. Right, we're there. So what you need to do now is you need to just move all of your sleeve around. Look for your placket underneath. Just move it all around. And then you need to then position this stitched part of your sleeve onto this drawn line of your placket underneath. So first of all, just get it into position. And then just make sure by pulling the back of your placket that you've got that really nice and straight. So if any of this fabric bunches up here, just move it out. Just take your time to get it all in place. I'm just making sure that my stitch line is sitting on that drawn line. Okay, I'm going to hold that there. And I'm just going to make sure that the placket is straight. So I'm just pulling it from the back and just ensuring that it is straight. And it might take a few attempts, but it's worth just taking your time. Okay, so once you're happy, start stitching from the left side of the stitching. And just let it run onto that extended bit of the placket. Right, okay. So before you go any further, just check that you have actually caught all of the fabric of the sleeve into your placket and that it looks like a nice straight line in the back. Okay, so now you've got your placket attached to your sleeve, you just need to really give it a good press, and you need to press the sleeve towards the placket because it's this seam allowance is going to be encased into the placket. So a nice press, including the extension. And also press from the other side as well. So once you have done that, it's all nicely pressed, just flatten out your placket, give it an iron. Then fold your placket to meet the edge of the other raw edge of your placket. So effectively you're turning this edge in by 1/4 of an inch. And just give it a press. And then I use my double-sided tape to put it along the folded edge of the placket. Okay, take the protective sheet off. Right, so once the tape is exposed, then just turn it towards that stitched line and position it just slightly past the line, so effectively you can't see that stitching. Okay, just give it another press. So I'm going to stitch from the wrong side of the sleeve. So this is the side that has actually been stitched, and the bit that's stuck down is underneath. So I'm going to effectively just start stitching in my extended bit of placket just so that I can get it into place, and then as I come down I'm going to stitch in into where the placket is joined to the sleeve. Right, so that's the wrong side of the sleeve, and that's the right side of the sleeve. So it will show, but it's still very neat and it's really nice and secure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fold it in half. Just make sure the bottom edge of the sleeve are together. And then I'm going to just put a little stitch in the top here. So I'm going to start in the middle, 2, 3, then back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then into the middle again, and then that's done. So this is our finished sleeve opening. So from the wrong side, this is where we stitched. So we stitched right into the existing stitch line, and then it just shows very fractionally on the front, but I'm not bothered by that at all. It still looks really nice and neat, and you know, it just sits nice. So I've also cut off the extended bits of the placket because they've now done their job. So that's the sleeve opening finished, and then with the two markings that we have left, we just need to bring those together and just check your pattern to make sure that you're doing them in the right direction. So they go towards the long bit, so they go towards that way, but always check your pattern. So I've got a line here and a line there, so, and I don't think you can see the lines very well, so use your little snips that you've made in the bottom of your sleeve to guide you as well. So that's that. I'm just going to pin. Okay, and I'm just going to base that down and also stitch down this part of the opening, because I just don't want that to come open when I'm putting the cuff on. Right, so the little tuck in the sleeve's been made, and I've stitched it down as well as stitching down the placket opening just there, just so it doesn't flip open when we're putting the cuff on, and that's nowhere near the seam allowance. So when the cuff goes on, that will all be hidden in the seam allowance. So, right, the bottom of our sleeve is now finished. The instructions say to put some gathering stitches into the sleeve cap. It also says to put some gathering stitches into the bottom of the sleeve. And I'm not going to do that because I have made this blouse before and it's not necessary. So after I've put my gathering stitches in the top of the sleeve, I'm going to join the sleeve side seam and overlock. Right, the sleeve has now been stitched and we can now prepare the cuff to insert into the sleeve. Right, so here's our cuff. So what I've done to start with, I have drawn with a erasable pen the seam allowance of 5/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to use that line to fold over the seam allowance and press. So once that's pressed, I'm just going to trim that down by half. Okay. So before I start pinning the cuff to the sleeve, I'm just going to put the seam allowance on both sides of the cuff. So the seam allowance is 5/8 of an inch. So I'm going to get my sleeve. And I'm going to start to pinning it on. So we need the seam allowance to extend past the sleeve. So that goes on there. And the same goes for the other side. So that needs to, that line, drawn line needs to sit on the end of that sleeve. Okay. So it's all pinned. So I will generally stitch from the inside so that I can make sure that I catch the side seam and the tuck that's in the sleeve correctly. Right, so it's been stitched at 5/8 of an inch, and I'm just going to trim it down by half. Okay, so once it's trimmed, you need to just give it a quick press. So, and you need to just make sure that the seam allowance that you've just trimmed is pushed towards the cuff, away from the sleeve. Okay. So you pull the cuff back on itself, and so it's right sides together, and then you join the cuff up. So you've got the seam allowance there, and you've got your sleeve opening there, so it all runs sort of nice in a straight line. So once you've got that there, you can pin it in place. And then what I do is the little fold over bit at the back, I just bring it forward so it sits flat. So what I do is the back part of the cuff is flat, and the front part has got the folded over seam allowance. The sleeve opening is here, and the sleeve opening will run flush to that seam allowance line. So what I want to do is when I take it to machine, I start from this piece here and I follow the line down. I don't need to stitch this, but it needs to really be as close to that as you can, so that when you get into the cuff, you continue your stitching down and you get a really nice cuff end to the sleeve. Right, so this is our cuff again. So you can see the bottom bit's flat. The cuff then is folded back on itself, and I'm using the drawn in line to just line up the sleeve placket, and I'm going to basically stitch from this point here all the way down, just following that stitch guideline, and that will bring me really close into that placket and get a really tight end to the cuff. Right, so here's the cuff again. So you can see I've stitched down. I haven't stitched the placket at all, but I have used it to guide my stitching down. So I've guided my stitching down, and then I've just followed the erasable pen down and used that as a stitch guide. So it's stitched all the way down, And then once I've done that and I'm happy with it, I will then just trim this down by half. And then you do exactly the same on the other side. Right, so once that's done, you just turn the cuff to the right side. Turn it around the other way, inside out. You've got all of your inside of the cuff here, so if you just bring that fold line down, get it nice and square, then bring it back on itself and just ease it all in. And then what you end up with, this will be pressed, but then what you end up with is this beautiful flat cuff leading into the sleeve placket. Okay, so I'm just going to give it all a press. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my double-sided tape again. I'm just going to attach it onto the folded edge of the cuff. And then I am going to press in my corners. They've already been pressed, so they should be pretty straightforward. Just stick them down and just literally bring the cuff up to the stitch line. And then once it's there, I will press it because my sticky tape isn't very sticky until I've pressed. Right, that's good. So that's not moving. And I do the other end. And then just press the rest of the cuff down. Just bring that cuff up to the stitch line. And then with the sticky tape will hold it into place. And generally what I like to do is I like to stitch from the front because this is the bit that everybody will see. So I just take my time and stitch around the cuff to get a really nice finish. And look how nice and straight that edge is. It's beautiful. Right, so there's our cuff, beautifully set in, really nice and flush to the sleeve opening, so I'm really pleased with that. And because I've used contrasting thread, I've just done a different effect on the sleeve, so you can do whatever you want. So I just felt that works really well, so I'm really pleased with that cuff. And the next thing is to set the sleeves in. Right, so next we're going to set in our sleeves. We've got our sleeve and our partially finished shirt. So we need to have them both right sides out. And then if you bring your shirt over and just find the sleeve seam, just pull it together there and start pinning. So we pin the side seams together first. Then go and have a look for the first notch. So I just work slowly around the sleeve. So we've got a double notch there, double notch on the sleeve. So pin that. And then as you work around, find the tailor's tacks. So I've got a tailor tack there on the sleeve, one on the shirt, pin that. Then the next one's at the top, so you have the top of your shirt, and go and find the next tailor's tack in the sleeve, so it's there. Pin that. Tailor's tack there, tailor's tack there. And then the final notch, single notch and single notch, so you know that you've got the right sleeve in the right armhole. So now you did put some gathering stitches in, and if you look very closely you can see the shirt doesn't actually need a lot of gathering. So I'm just going to find my ends of my gathering threads, and I'm just going to pull them very gently and just move them up through the shirt. Do that one side, get rid of get hold of the two threads on the other side, and then just gently pull those. And then basically what I do is I start from the top of the shirt, and then I work from each of the pins. So I've got a pin at the top of the shirt to the first tailor's tack, and then I just literally pull the gathering stitches back out down the sleeve until I can't move the gathering anymore. So that is all the gathered stitches that fit within that shirt area. So I just basically make sure that I smooth them out as much as I can so they're nice and evenly spread, and then once I've got them evenly spread I just pin that area. Alright, and we move on to the next two pins. You've got your pin here, so I'm just going to hold that fabric firm and then just pull the gathering and then pull the two pieces of fabric out. So basically you've got very small gathers in this shirt. So once it's nice and even, pin down through between the two pins. So there's no gathering at the end here, but I still will pin it. So that's one side of the sleeve pinned in, and then I go back up to the top again, and I just literally hold the top with the tailor's tack in, hold the two pieces of fabric nice and firm because you don't want to distort what you've already done on one side, and then you just gradually pull those gathers out until the two fabrics are evenly spread, and then you can pin in between the two pins. And basically you just carry on like that until you've come to the bottom of your sleeve. So once the sleeve's been pinned, you just take it to the machine and you stitch your seam allowance. So it's 5/8 of an inch, and you, with the gathers I put in, my stitching would basically go in between the gathers, and I would just pull the stitch in as I work through to get them as smooth as I can. Right. So I'm going to start stitching the sleeve in from the bottom seam, so the seam that effectively sits underneath the arm. I'm just going to position it in, get my 5/8 of an inch positioned, put my needle in to start, and then start stitching around nice and slowly. So once the sleeve has been stitched, I just turn it out so I can have a look at the right side, and I just go around the armhole, just checking to make sure it's all nice and smooth. So you can see there I have a little tuck. So all I do with that is I just go and find it. So there it is there. I just get my unpicker and I just unpick a few stitches either side. Once they're unpicked, I just flatten that area out again. I get it nice and smooth, and I just literally stitch it again and just work from the one stitched end to the other, and then just ensure that that's nice and flat. So I've re-stitched that bit of the sleeve, and I've been around the sleeve just double checking that it's all nice and smooth, and then I'm just going to take all of the tailor's tacks out and trim all of the loose threads off. Okay, and then I will take out the gathering stitches just by pulling them out. So once everything's tidied, you can then overlock. Right, so that's the sleeve now overlocked. I'm just going to give it a really good press. So I'm sorry that the video came to a very abrupt end there, but when I originally recorded this sew along, it was a really long video, and because it didn't upload, I've had to sort of cut it at certain points. So I do apologise for where it finished in this video, but tomorrow's video will be the finishing touches and the reveal. So hopefully you're still with me and still enjoying the sew along, and if you have enjoyed the content, please give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, it would be lovely if you could, and if you are a subscriber, I will see you all very soon. Take care.